Hey everybody, welcome to Back-ish. I'm Sal.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Tiffany.
Today, I thought we'd do Daredevil and Batman. An eye for an eye.
Wait, what?
Yeah.
Hey, that makes sense. You know, bats are blind.
And so
And
is
so is
Daredevil.
Daredevil.
After DC versus Marvel, or during that whole mess, Marvel and DC were getting on with each other. Like, they were doing okay. And, well, because the industry was all in the toilet, and they were like,
Right.
we're in this together, or we're all gonna sink.
So they're each other's life vests.
Yes. And so they started making these crossovers. And it's interesting because I love comic book crossovers. And I've read many of them, and I really can't understand for the life of me why I like them so much, because so much of them are so terrible.
Right.
And it's interesting, I was just reading a article that interviewed Tom Brevoort of Marvel, and they were like, any odds of you guys ever doing a crossover DC again? He's like, no. Because that betrays a level of desperation that we are definitely not in.
But you are desperate.
No, we're not. DC is in the same boat because they interviewed Didio around the same time. They're like, crossovers with Marvel? And they're like, nah, I don't see that happening anytime soon. And he also cited that it was kind of a creatively bankrupt concept. DC, you crossed over with Power Rangers this year.
Yes.
You crossed over with Ninja Turtles,
Well,
which
no.
arguably is awesome, but it's also like, no, you have no problem crossing over. It's just that you won't cross over with the biggest gun next door.
Right. Well, they're like, no, the Power Rangers crossover with us.
You also did a Green Lantern Star Trek crossover, 2 volumes worth.
Well,
of
who
them.
doesn't love Star Trek, huh? It's a cultural icon.
Yeah.
Everyone, it's science fiction.
And wouldn't everyone also like to see maybe like a good Daredevil versus Batman?
That sounds like garbage to me.
That sounds like we have no good ideas left if you did something like that.
We've already done that.
Yeah,
We're
twice.
only looking for new things.
And by the way, like, this was the first one, and it was interesting because during the time when Marvel and DC were creatively bankrupt and also financially bankrupt as well, and
Right.
desperately needed help, they were working on these crossovers. And in fact, we've done several of them during that period. We did Spider-Man Batman,
Yep.
and Batman Spider-Man, and you know, there's a couple of those that are fun, and I think it's because they gave it to like really creative people. Okay, so I guess Marvel and DC were like, you do one and we do one. So with Spider-Man and Batman, Marvel did one and DC did one. Marvel's was better in the Spider-Man Batman one. This was the first one they did. Marvel got to publish the Daredevil Batman one, but 3 years later, they got together and did another one, Batman and Daredevil, where DC did one. It's weird that it took them 3 years to get there, because at that point, things were already completely changing.
Okay.
DC's like, we have to top Marvel.
Yeah.
We gotta come up with an idea, guys, and we're not leaving this boardroom until we do.
Yeah, and they kind of do. The cover's better. But this is their first attempt, and it was like, okay, well, we don't know what we're doing at Marvel, and we especially don't know what we're doing with Daredevil, so I guess we'll just get the guys who are doing Daredevil right now. Which unfortunately means that it was D.G. Chichester and Scott McDaniel. We know D.G. Chichester because he wrote Daredevil Fall from Grace, which we did on Back Issues, and it's garbage.
Yeah.
So let's get that team together and do this disposable crossover of Batman meeting Daredevil. This should be awesome. And the reason why I'm really harsh on this book is because I've been wanting to read this since 1997, and I never got around to it. And then Marvel and DC were like, fuck you, and just didn't get along again. And so this fell completely out of print, and it was only available in either the Awful Crossover Classics Volume 3 or here. This was in a comic book store's recent acquisitions bin literally 2 days ago, and I saw it and was like, yes! And then I read it.
D.G. Chichester sounds like either an imaginary friend or he should have a children's show on PBS.
Yes, like he is the steward of a magical realm where
Right.
things are made from candy.
Yeah, exactly.
Or the mascot of a very cheesy brand of snack.
Yeah.
Yeah, like he's some sort of bear or lemur.
Yeah, or a sandwich cookie man, where his head is the sandwich cookie.
Yeah, he's got a top hat.
Yes, absolutely. And at least a cane, if not a monocle. But
So that's who's writing this. Got it.
so yeah, D.G. Chichester writes this. Scott McDaniel draws it, and he does the best he can.
Let's do it. I'm excited. These are two great characters. They're street level.
They're street level characters.
They're-
They are obsessed with justice.
Yes.
They both are like totemic avatars of their respective obsessions.
Right. They're both very protective of their cities.
Yes.
Those are their cities.
Yes,
And
exactly.
they want to care for them.
None of those things are relevant or are applicable in this book for some reason.
Okay. They both don't have families.
Nope, we don't reference that either.
Oh, okay.
No.
When you said these are two street-level characters, I thought you were talking about the writer and the artist. I'm like, yeah, one's a bizarre, like, bear cookie man, and one's a guy who is very confused that he is working with the bizarre bear
Yes.
cookie man.
That's correct.
So, alright, weird things about Daredevil and Batman. One, it's an Elseworlds book. It's a Marvel DC co-production, but obviously produced by Marvel. But Marvel chose to make it an Elseworlds book.
Yeah. What?
Weird.
How do they do that?
I don't know.
How
It's
did
a weird distinction. I don't know why, because in the Spider-Man Batman crossover that Marvel published, no Elseworlds reference. But the reason why it's an Elseworlds book is because, okay, wouldn't it be... Elseworlds are great books, because you're like, oh, it's Batman, but in the Old West. Or it's Batman, but he's Green Lantern. Or it's Batman, and it's Jack the Ripper era.
Yup.
You know, or other characters, but for the most part, it's Batman. Elseworlds. We're going to do something cool. It's Batman and Daredevil, but you're making an Elseworlds book. Okay. So the idea of taking these two iconic characters that really, truly mirror each other in their respective universes is too blasé for you. You want to go someplace weird with it. Fine. You're going to make it Elseworlds. It's like a noir 1920s Daredevil and like Gotham by Gaslight Batman or something. No, it's just the same shit you normally see, but also they live in the same universe.
Sal, if we don't make this an Elseworlds book, and people think that there's a character called Daredevil who is pretty much a good mirror of Batman, they might start reading Daredevil.
Yes.
We don't want that.
We can't have that. I mean, maybe that's the concern. I don't know. The only thing that makes it an Elseworlds book is the retconning of one of the characters a little bit. But for the most part, it's literally just like, so Gotham's over there, New York's over there.
Okay.
We don't bother with the universes, you know, like, oh, a dimensional rift happens, and then Daredevil swings through, and he
Right.
decides to help Batman solve a case
Right.
before he can get back to his original plane of origin. No, it's just, Batman's over there, Daredevil. This is the first time they met, even though they've been around forever.
Okay.
Fine.
Yeah.
Fine. It worked in Spider-Man Batman. I had no qualms about it.
Right.
I will not bring up that problem here. That being said, story opens. Wayne Tech has been robbed of some cutting edge, you might even say bleeding edge, technology.
Oh, is it like a new blind person came?
No, it's nothing to do with the blind thing or Daredevil. This sucks so much. It's so disappointing. It's such a calamity. So okay, Wayne Tech got robbed, as it always does.
Yeah.
And Batman investigates, and he finds out that like there's some stuff missing from his like very very like cutting edge development thing.
How does he find the time to pay attention to this stuff?
Well, he gets briefings from Lucius or Alfred. I'm assuming.
Right, but like he's fighting crime like all the time.
Yes.
Why do you think he's fighting crime all the time? I think he like purposely makes the security around Wayne Tech really lax so that he can have people steal his stuff and he goes to find it.
Right.
Are you saying that Batman's creating his own crime so that he has something to do?
No, Batman's just letting crime exist.
Wow.
That's like
It's dark.
It's almost as bad as committing those crimes, Ben.
Almost. It's a very fine line,
Yeah.
and he walks it well.
Here's the thing. They didn't have to do it. It's like an honor box. Like, you don't have to take every paper. You do because it's only a quarter. But at the same time, I'm the one committing the crime. And so I deserve to be beaten savagely by Batman.
Okay.
I'm just gonna leave my wallet right here. I hope
your
no one
move-
takes it.
Your move, crime. Batman's tech development people are inventing, hold for it, a neural net processor.
What?
A learning computer. But it's not the learning... They have the audacity to use the term neural net processor, the thing from Terminator that all Terminators have that allows them to take in information and process it and become like more human.
And you said this came out in the late 90s.
97, yeah.
Yeah, that's way after T2.
But it uses it does it in a different way. It's called a neural net because the concept is it's an AI, or it's a new developing AI that functions like a human brain.
Okay.
But in order for it to grow and develop, it needs to start within an actual human being's head. So you take these pills that like are that germinate the neural net in the person's head, and then it like grows. Like it basically creates like a neural net over their brain and like kind of learns and grows. And the more that a person thinks and works and operates, and the more like firepower their brain operates, the hotter it becomes, and the more like active and quickly expanding the neural net becomes.
So when you put it in Batman's head, it like grows exponentially.
Well, it would, but the problem is the neural net is inherently flawed because it kills the host.
What?
Because you're growing something in someone's skull.
And I'm sorry, and Wayne Tech is doing this?
Well, they were until they found out that it kills the subject. They were operating on monkeys, and it's funny because you see like a couple of like doctors' blogs, more or less, like they're just video reports about them. They're like toasting themselves, like we've accomplished the neural net, haha. And then you see like later another video of them being like, well, we had to shelve it. It kills the host.
And Gorilla Grodd is not the one who's like
outraged.
Destroying the program?
No!
How dare you!
That would be great if like Gorilla Grodd...
Or Brainiac shows up? No.
Yeah. Oh, no.
That's my shtick.
Yeah.
Get out.
No, that's not any good. So, that's the premise, is that like Batman's people invented this technology that you can't use. But the idea would be that like if it were capable of being used, it would be like a self-replicating learning computer that you could have, and like maybe it'll help you commit more crimes. The point is Two-Face steals it because he's like, I'm gonna use this and then sell it on the black market, because it's 1997 and the black market is dominated by stolen technology.
And idiots who like, that sounds great, a computer that'll go in my brain and kill me.
Well, I think, no, the idea is that because, you see, Two-Face has teamed up with another villain, Marvel's Mr. Hyde, who... If you're not familiar with Mr. Hyde,
nope.
You're not. It's Calvin Zabo. He's a geneticist or something. He's just an evil character who mirrors the Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde motif. And he like experimented on himself because he was fascinated by the concept of like human hormones and whatnot. And he made himself into a monster. And then later on, he winds up hooking up with like a prostitute. And then he sires Daisy Johnson, aka Quake.
Yep.
And she's a way more interesting character.
Which I only know of because of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.
Which I know of because of Secret War, which we did on back issues, where she was first introduced when the artist used just Angelina Jolie from Hackers as the template for her. Which is why I'm like, that's not Quake. Quake looks like Angelina Jolie from Hackers.
By the way, that's like my favorite Angelina Jolie.
Easily. So...
I love Hackers. I can't help it. It's crappy, but I love it.
It's so horrible. Like just the tech and everything. It's just, but it's a lot like this in that they steal technology that they're gonna like sell on the black market. Okay, so Mr. Hyde, this hulking, super strong bad guy, and he's not too bright. Two-Face teams up with him. He convinces Zabo, who is not.
It's like all there.
Well, he's not all there, and he's also not against like taking drugs and like using pills to augment his self.
Right.
So Two-Face like, here, take these. They're even better, and they're of course the catalyst for the neural net that is now growing in Mr. Hyde's brain.
Right, but if he's like,
he's gonna kill him.
Yeah, but
and then cut him open and take the neural net out and sell it on the black market.
It's not gonna grow very fast if he's not.
No, it is because Two-Face and Mr. Hyde basically go on like a crime spree. Like attacking different tech companies, and or actually they wind up attacking an arcade and like breaking down the machines and stealing like parts and like motherboards. But the point is
from arcades.
Yes, and Chichester makes a point of saying that like the processors and like motherboards within arcades are like actually way more powerful than you expect. Fucking wrong. Okay. No, they're not.
A, wrong, but B. Two-Face also has to take out chips from games that have two main characters.
Yeah.
That you play at the same time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, that's his thing. He's
Oh,
like, no, we can't take that one.
He does.
That's Galaga.
Yeah, that has
Fuck
one.
that.
That's one player. Like, or no, you can't play the X-Men one because that's a poor player.
I assumed that he was like, wait, hang on, you can't just go in there, flip. Okay.
Oh no, there's a whole thing about like coins and quarters and how like they're used to escape into a realm where you're powerful. You know, like putting quarters
sucks.
into it. It sucks. It's awful. It's just
How
like
is that? That's
so hand-fisted.
That's not anything for Two-Face. Two-Face just has it because it's...
No, but he's like, because he kills the guy who runs the arcade, and he's like talking about quarters and coins and how he's like, you use these coins to escape into another place where you're powerful and stuff, and like I use them to make judgment on you, and you're like, shut the fuck up.
That's like someone being like, you wear that hat because you like the way it looks, and I use it as a crapper.
Yeah.
Like, those are two entirely different things.
Yeah.
But they're both hats.
Yes, but only one is used for the function that I'm using it for.
So...
You're not supposed to crap in your hat.
So if Hyde's got this thing in his head, right?
But which he does not aware of.
Right, but
the harder he thinks and the more that he works, the harder he works and the more like...
So it has nothing to do with the quality of the thought.
Oh, no.
It's just the more the brain is used.
Just
Yes. The hotter your head runs and the faster the neural net grows.
So the dumber you are, the faster it grows.
I guess.
Because it takes a lot.
It takes a lot of neural power to like
Figure
operate
out
your
what's
legs
going
and arms.
on.
Mr. Hyde is growing this thing that is eventually going to kill him, and they're also killing people in their sprees, and that caught the attention of Batman and Daredevil.
Cool.
And so Batman is investigating the assassination of like this guy who was working in the sewers, because when Two-Face was operating in the beginning of his spree, he couldn't just walk around in broad daylight because he's freaking Two-Face, so he travels via sewer. And so he's down there and he comes across this dude and he kills him, and so Batman finds the dead guy. And in fact, Batman gets there last, Daredevil finds the guy first, and Batman is tracking like heat signatures from human bodies, and so he finds the heat signature of Daredevil, who is on this dead body.
Who is the most recent one there?
Yes. So
All right.
Batman is basically tracking the wrong guy. Like, he thinks he's tracking the guy who killed this guy, and so he engages Daredevil. And
he's drawn, like... I've never seen. I mean, I've seen that before.
Yeah, it's Scott McDaniel's
like
version.
This.
Yeah, with the crooks, the hook.
I've seen
shoulders.
it before. It's always weird.
Batman sneaks up on Daredevil, and you're like, oh, Batman snuck up on Daredevil. That's awesome because he's just that good. But then Batman like jumps at Daredevil, and that's what triggers Daredevil's radar sense. And so Batman and Daredevil trade blows, and it's easily the only cool moment in this entire book. Batman engages Daredevil. Daredevil like throws a big piece of machinery in the way, and Batman like just tears through it. The two of them fight. Batman throws two batarangs, so Daredevil catches both of them in midair and then holds them up to his head like they're horns.
Because he's the devil.
Because he's Daredevil.
Or he's also making fun of Batman's horns.
Yeah, if he can see them. And then they fight, and then basically Batman puts Daredevil into a headlock, and then Daredevil's like, obviously, I'm not the bad guy, and we're both here. We're both superheroes in tights in the sewer investigating a dead body. We're obviously investigating the same problem. And Batman's like, that's right.
Who the hell said you were a hero, though?
Yeah, Batman doesn't care about that, but he does say... Daredevil is weird, and he's really like oddly written in this story, where he's like, so we could either go and solve this problem, or we could just stay here and kill each other. Try to guess which one that I'm hoping you're going to do. And you're like, what?
Like, why are you so antagonistic?
They're both so antagonistic, to the point where it gets really stupid.
Is it Catch the Killer? No! Oh.
That's dumb.
That's weird.
Yeah. So then we get a weird piece of retconning, and that's why we have the Elseworlds, where we find out that at Matt Murdock's university, they had like a visiting student from Gotham University, and the idea was that Matt Murdock and Harvey Dent were both law students around the same time. And so Murdock and Dent debate each other about justice.
Okay.
And that's neat. That's
Fine.
all.
Sure.
So then you have this cool image of Batman and Daredevil swinging across the city. These are the images that I've seen of the crossover. I'm like, yes, right, I'm
want
in.
that.
Daredevil and Batman, here we go. Batman's like, you're blind, right? Because you rely on all your senses. And Daredevil's like, what? How can you know that? And then Batman just ditches Daredevil.
What?
He just bails. The two of them are arguing about, like, who's a bigger dickhead, and then Batman just jumps into the Batmobile and drives away.
Batman's like, I'm gonna win this argument.
Yeah.
Bye!
And so Batman leaves, and then Daredevil jumps on the Batmobile, and then Batman tries to shake Daredevil off the Batmobile. Then he does, and then Daredevil jumps in front of the Batmobile. And then Batman's like, let's see if this guy truly is the man without fear, and then drives at breakneck speed at Daredevil. And plays chicken with him. You know, like Batman would never do.
And then he pulls out a big gun and shoots at him.
Because that's exactly how out of character Batman is written.
That sounds like the Batman I know.
And then Daredevil starts like using his radar sense to try and like trigger his heartbeat. And he can glean that the man is not a murderer. But he has had the same steady heartbeat since they met in the sewers. And so there's no way to tell what Batman's going to do next. He can't tell if Batman is going to kill him because he doesn't know the heart rate of like Batman's when Batman's agitated.
That's terrible.
I agree with the idea that Batman can steady his heartbeat such that Daredevil can't tell what Batman's thinking.
If he's trying to, sure. But this is out of the blue.
Right, it's really random that Batman would choose to drive the Batmobile at someone, let alone like another superhero.
But no, but this entire time he's like, no, he's kept his heartbeat the exact same. Like,
Yeah.
I'm
He
sorry,
did know that.
since you were tracking me, you kept your heartbeat the entire, like, the exact same.
Yeah.
Like you knew I could sense it?
Right. Or no, it's more like Batman is just always in one mode, you know? He's like...
Or Batman just assumes everyone can sense his heartbeat.
Yeah.
Or Batman has a pacemaker.
He's like, you never know. So
He disguises his heartbeat as a pacemaker to trick Clark.
right? I'm sorry. At what point will they actually be solving any crime?
Shortly after this.
Oh, okay.
So then Daredevil's like, oh my god, like I don't think this dude's gonna swerve. And then Batman swerves out of the way.
In the tiniest Batmobile I've ever seen.
It's the worst.
It's like the Bat Coupe.
Yeah, it sucks. I hate this Batmobile. Thankfully, you'll never see it again. Because Scott McDaniel's drawing it and he doesn't normally draw this book. And then Daredevil says, I guess to himself or to the audience, blink. Like her. He blinked first, even though I was shitting my pants earlier. So we have the subplot where like, what are Two-Face and Mr. Hyde up to? So Two-Face,
You know, the crime?
yeah,
They're
the
working
crime.
well together.
They are like they wind up Two-Face and Mr. Hyde are trying to fence some technology to like a jeweler who's moonlighting as a
fence?
villain fence, yeah.
All right.
And then Mr. Hyde just murders her and hangs her from the ceiling of like this church that they're hiding out in. And then Two-Face is like, cool, yeah, all right. Well, now that I know that like you are freaking out, you are ready to like start like cooking my neural net. He's thinking this obviously, but like so then they go off and they start more crime sprees. This Batman and Daredevil both wind up at the same crime scene at the same exact time. So Batman and Daredevil find the dead body of this lady. They cut her down. They feel kind of bad about her.
They're like, man, if we had just not fought.
Yeah, she would definitely not be dead. So then Batman reveals the Wayne Tech neural net thing and that Two-Face stole it. And
He knows this already?
yeah, well, Batman knows that because in the beginning of the story, Batman was investigating the theft of the neural net.
Yeah, but
So,
he
like,
knows it was Two-Face?
Yeah, he knows it was Two-Face.
Okay.
Yeah, he was tracking Two-Face the entire time. And Daredevil was tracking Mr. Hyde, and so their paths crossed. And so then Batman and Daredevil surmise that the neural net must be cooking in Mr. Hyde, and so they're like, "Oh man, we got to go save Mr. Hyde," basically. And so the last crime that Mr. Hyde and Two-Face perpetrate is they go to a coffee bar and internet cafe and just like start kicking over desks and like threatening to kill people.
That's my kind of crime.
It's like the worst thing ever, but it's just a excuse. Like it would have been it's just that we're doing a theme of technology, but like if it was just the nearest thing they could rob and cause the most mayhem because there's a lot of like innocent people in there and which they're threatening and everything.
So does Two-Face walk by every building and just keep flipping his coin and be like, should I knock this over? No. Should I knock this over? No.
I mean,
oh, hey, this place!
the randomness by which they do their crimes suggests that is exactly his MO. Mr. Hyde is like increasingly freaking out and like losing his shit, which indicates to Two-Face that he's almost ready to pop. Mm-hmm. It's like, oh cool, you're almost ready to die. And then literally like his plan is Mr. Hyde will die, I'll rip the neural net out of your brain.
How?
Oh, I'll cut your head open. And then I'll clean it off and then sell it on the black market as a fully functioning AI that people can use.
Isn't this like a delicate piece of technology that will require like a skilled surgeon to remove?
Flip. No.
So
That's not how it works.
So Batman arrives there first because he took a car, and then he engages Mr. Hyde and Two-Face, and then Daredevil shows up late, and then Batman and Two-Face basically...
He had to go to confession.
Yeah. So Batman and Two-Face basically like trade villains. So
Yeah.
Batman's taking on Mr. Hyde, and
Sure.
Two-Face has a hostage, of course, because he's like a dude with facial scarring, so he's obviously not going to like get one up on Daredevil. Batman is going to get killed by Mr. Hyde because Mr. Hyde is basically like a Hulk, and he's like crushing him. And then Daredevil swoops in and saves Batman from Mr. Hyde. So Batman is taking on Mr. Hyde and like trying to like subdue him or keep him from like causing more of a rampage and killing people.
Mm-hmm.
And then Two-Face,
And failing?
yeah, and Two-Face has a hostage and he's squaring off against Daredevil, and Daredevil's like, Harvey, please, like you have to stop. Oh God, I forgot about this flashback. In the flashback where Matt and Harvey meet for the first time,
Okay.
like they debate each other, and then Harvey makes a point about like justice and how like the scales are tipped, and there's a big statue of Justice with a big scale, and so Harvey like climbs on it, and he's like, you better tip the scales, or or even out the scales with me, or I'm gonna break the statue and then I'm gonna have to get kicked out, and since you think I'm such a great law student, like I would ruin my career. And you're like, what the fuck? So then like at the last second, Murdoch like jumps onto the scale and keeps the statue from falling over, so it keeps Harvey Dent's career alive. You're like, what the fuck is happening? And the reason why I bring it up and why I forgot it is because A, it sucks and it's forgettable, and B, because Murdoch/Daredevil brings it up to Two-Face to get him to snap out of it for a few seconds, and then ultimately give up the antidote, or like this syringe that will basically kill the neural net.
I'm sorry, there was a syringe this whole time?
Oh yeah,
and Batman didn't have it?
No, Daredevil or Two-Face took it. Yeah, Two-Face took it when he stole the whole thing. Two-Face stole all of the accoutrement that came with the neural net.
What was it, like,
It was
in a
bunch
small suitcase?
Yeah, it was a small thing. It's a bunch of pills and this little syringe thing with a color-coded locking mechanism. So when he gives it up, he has to also tell them like what the color code is.
Really? Really, guys? My one weakness!
Colors.
Yeah.
They even smell the same. Jesus.
Yeah, and that's the big tension of the scene, because Daredevil gets the syringe, he stabs it into him, and then he says, like, the color code is blue, red, green, and Daredevil says, oh. And then Batman says, let me help, and then he does it. And then it kills the neural net, and it saves Mr. Hyde. They rescue the young film student that the Two-Face had under, like, shotgun threat, and then, what's it called? And then Daredevil taunts Two-Face and says, I thought you were an actual risk taker. And then Two-Face says, that was the last act of Harvey Dent, and now there is only Two-Face. And then Batman and Daredevil go, then rest in peace. And then the story ends with Matt Murdock and Foggy Nelson at a gala function thrown by Bruce Wayne, and they're there trying to, like, score new clients when Matt Murdock hears a familiar heartbeat, and he walks up to Bruce Wayne, and the two of them whip out their dicks and measure them again, because basically Bruce Wayne says, because Bruce Wayne says, ah, yes, Mr. Murdock, I know you by reputation, although I must say, as for a blind man, you seem to get around rather easily. And then, they just go back and forth.
Yeah, well, you're Batman!
Exactly. So then, literally, Bruce Wayne says,
Whoa.
yeah, it's a horrible looking last image, but it's also the worst way to end the story. Bruce Wayne says, if you're looking for clients in Gotham, it can be a rather dangerous place. And Daredevil says, I'm afraid you're a little too subtle for me, Mr. Wayne. And then Bruce says, don't come to Gotham, Murdoch. And then Murdoch smiles like a lunatic and says, why, Mr. Wayne, are you daring me? And then everyone in the surrounding area goes, is that Batman and Daredevil? What the hell's happening? And then no one enjoyed the issue or bought it.
So the only thing that Batman and Daredevil did together was work a syringe to get a color combination.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they sure did.
They saved Mr. Hyde. That's it.
Yeah, and that person.
And they let a few people die.
Oh, along the way. That happens.
Yeah, big time.
sometimes you have to.
You're gonna lose a few.
You got to turn a blind eye.
Oh, Daredevil and Batman Eye for an Eye is probably the worst crossover I've ever read, and I did Spider-Man Gen 13 not too long ago and said that was the worst crossover I've ever
This
done.
is not good. This is like...
It's so thoroughly disappointing. And then you read Batman and Daredevil, which is
The
3
sequel.
years later, and it's a sequel, and it's in the continuity of that story. They
No.
literally reference the stupid chicken scene.
No.
Yes, and yet still better. It was
I don't
so
understand
bad.
how this doesn't open with Matt Murdock defending someone who got injured by some Wayne Tech thing.
Or
and
by
then, like,
Batman.
oh, okay, yeah.
And he's like, hey, and then he encounters Batman. He's like, you're a lunatic who beats other people. Like,
But then,
screw
like,
you.
he comes to
Isn't that
understand...
hypocritical?
Shut up. I'm a lawyer. That's what I am. That's
No,
I'm
I
built on
was
a
gonna
foundation
say
of hypocrisy.
he thinks he's a lunatic, and then he meets him, and he's like, he understands his love for his city, and he sees something of himself in Batman.
That would be great.
In a sense, and
Yeah,
like,
and if it wasn't written by D.G. Chichester, it'd probably be done like that.
And then they make out.
just a little bit,
The problem
like a little
is,
tongue.
the problem is, Brevoort and DiDio are not wrong in that most because he says, like, one of them says at one point in the interview that I read, you've seen the crossovers and they're all ultimately disappointing because there's nothing you can do with them. They can't go anywhere. They can't break new ground. You can't create characters because then who owns them? It's a big mess. So ultimately they have to be like disposable. And it's like, bitch, you make monthly comics. So many of them are disposable. And yet they're also great single issues that you release.
Yeah.
So like, how about you just put good talent on them? It's why some crossovers are awesome and some crossovers are garbage. Like, clearly, this was just, we're doing these crossovers. We might as well just put this out. Give it to the guys who are doing Daredevil right now. They're the guys who are doing Daredevil right now. We can't also say, like, we can't give it to the guys who are doing Daredevil right now. They suck. Like, of course they can't handle a Batman-Daredevil crossover. They can't even handle Daredevil. Obviously, hindsight being 2020, we knew that was a horrible team to give it to. But like,
who else?
If they could have just been like, well, we'll give it to whoever. Like, hey, I've got a great person to do a Daredevil Batman crossover in 1997.
Oh, no,
His
you
name
can't.
is Frank Miller.
No, he's written both characters competently.
Yeah.
But then he'd clearly have a preference for one, right?
No, it would have been amazing. And so I say out there, by the way, I've been pitching a Bendis Batman Daredevil crossover forever.
They're pretty good.
Because Bendis wrote for both characters and he knows how to do it, and it would also be really cool. Malieve drawing it.
Yeah.
It would look freaking amazing.
That'd be pretty awesome.
And it'd be a 6-issue series, and it would only need and it would have the content of 3. But you'd have a lot of cool shit happening in them.
Yes.
Because like the problem is because you can't get like we haven't seen a Marvel DC crossover since 2000.
Yeah.
And even then, they were doing the same shit they've been doing since like 1970 freaking 5 or whenever they did Spider-Man, Superman.
Right.
I have not seen modern sensibilities in a crossover. It's why I like Spider-Man, Batman so much because like it's the closest you'll get. Because
Yeah.
DeMatteo is like, I'm writing a comic book. I don't write garbage, and if I do, it's like because I got too close to it or something. But like he's like, I'm writing a story
Yeah.
that has like thematic elements in it. He literally opens that story drawing word for word, image for image parallels between Batman and Spider-Man.
Yeah.
Batman and Daredevil deserved no less, and they got way less.
Yeah, they really did. Like,
Horrible.
I've seen people write Batman like that, where he's overly aggressive.
Yes.
And I never can get on board with that.
No.
Well, that's the Marvel viewpoint. It's like, Batman's a freaking maniac.
Yeah, but like Daredevil's no different. Like I have a hard time seeing Daredevil being
Well, it depends.
that
The problem is
aggressive.
Daredevil is so versatile. Like, there's happy-go-lucky Daredevil. There's Death Wish Daredevil. There's like law-oriented Daredevil. Like, there's a lot of different versions of Daredevil you could do.
Right, but why would you do this?
Oh, because I'm D.G. Chichester and I can't write for shit. That's it. It's just, I write bad Daredevil stories. And for the price of one, I also wrote a bad Batman story to boot. You're welcome. Like, that's just it. It's just that they didn't think, because it was 1997 and both companies were in the crapper. It's a perfect testament to how bad off comics were at that time. They both were like, I don't care. We just need to put it out. We will work together and share the profits off this book. That's how bad we need it.
If you write it, they'll buy it. Just
Probably.
do it.
Yeah, that's the sad part at that point.
Yeah. And indeed they did, because, like, I can't find that book anywhere. Of course, they threw it off across the room, so obviously everyone probably burned theirs the minute they finished reading them.
No!
Daredevil and Batman from 1997.
Well,
The
thanks.
worst. And
You can't find it.
You can't find it. I'll try to find a link for you in the description, but, like, you can't get it
And
anywhere.
don't try very hard.
I mean, if you want to read it, it's like, it's so not worth it.
If you're looking to make yourself angry, do something else that sucks.
Because, yeah, like, stub your toe, or, like, hit your thumb with a hammer, because, like, even the narration is... It's not even just horribly written, because everyone's out of character, but the narration is also horrible. There's an omniscient narrator, and he's terribly pretentious, and uses words incorrectly. Like, it is just a garbage fire. So, we'll see if it's the worst crossover ever done on back issues, because there's plenty more where that came from. But I want to thank you all for watching. We'll see you guys next week with an all new episode. I'm Sal.
I'm Ben.
And I'm Tiffany.
Thanks a lot for watching.